have to bear with me.
Oh, apparently I started recording. I didn't mean to, but yeah, you can go ahead and start because it is 7:05
It is 7:05. Well, and if people join in,
and they
yeah,
still will.
there are, you know. All right. So where's my? Do I have my list? What did I do with my list over here? So I usually make my hats, and this is just a basic 4-panel hat. Um, let's see. And what you need is fabric of some sort. I use wool a lot because that's what I like. Sometimes I do one layer of wool. Like this is a thick enough wool. This is almost a coat weight wool. Well, actually, it is a coat weight wool. Oh, look, I think it's sleeve actually. Okay, not cutting that up. Must be a sleeve for something. But it's coat weight wool. You can get away with one layer, but I use often will do 2 layers just so I get a little bit of contrast in my colors and such. But you can make it out of linen, you can make it out of wool, cotton, you can make it out of fleece because not everybody likes natural fibers. Some people, we call them vegan hats. You can make you can line them with anything. I usually end up doing 2 layers of wool because I like to have my head nice and warm. You will need a yarn or a thread of some sort. I usually use the where's the one that I had that was labeled? Ah, I do apologize. There's a lot of them. I have a lot of wool in various colors. I usually get the uh, tapestry type one wools that have 3 threads. The Persian, I think it's the Persian. That way, if the wool is really if the fabric you're using is really thin, you can use more layers and more strands. But if it's a really thick wool, like this one that I'm going to be using, I will probably just use 2 because it's harder to pull through the wool. So I try to think of these things as we go. But you can use linen thread, cotton thread, wool yarn, silk thread, anything like that. And you can trim them with real fur, fake fur, or a inkle loom trim. I've not done those because that's still on my list of things to learn how to do. This one is my first hat. Oh, should take the thing out of my hair. This is the first hat I made years and years and years ago. It's getting very old and decrepit, and the moths have gotten to it, so it's not as fluffy as it was. But this is the kind I like. This is the kind I'll be talking about. And you can do things. You can decorate them. Where's the other one? I did just a basic stitching on it, just to have some design on it. And I lost. Oh, there's my other hat. I didn't make this one, but somebody else did. This one actually is a 6-panel hat, and they just did a very basic design on top. And so it kind of makes it kind of spiffy when you're wearing it. You got this cool design. All right. So since it's warm here, I gotta put my hair back up because it's all too warm. So to start, you need to make your pattern. And first we do is we take the circumference measurement of where you want the hat to sit. Some people like to have them sit low. We're going to be silly and do this. Some people like them higher up. So wherever you want it to fit. I kind of like it over the top of my ears. And my measurement is about 23. And so of course, you divide that by 4. And then you have to add 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch for seam allowance. And you have to remember to add the seam allowance to the top and the bottom of your pattern. And so you get your measurement, the circumference measurement, and then you measure basically from where you wanting your hat to sit across the top of your head, and you divide that in half, which is for me it's 6.5. So what I want to start with, let me see if I can do this with the camera. Sorry for the jiggling. I'm going to do this. Let's see if I can angle it down to. You can tell I am not used to Zoom. All right, so I have my ruler here, And so my measurements was 23 divided by 4. It's basically 6 inches for the base of my, there we go, the base of my pattern. But I'm going to make it just over 6.5. That way I have seam allowance. So I'm just gonna, actually I kind of cut this almost perfect here. And then I'm gonna cheat and find the center of that. And this is actually just heavy interfacing that I'm using to make the pattern off of, but you can use anything. And so my, sorry about that, my measurement over the top of my head was 13. So half of that is 6.5, but I'm gonna make it to be 7.5 because I want to have room to have measurement seam down here and the seam allowance around. So actually, I guess I'm making 7.25 because that's where I cut my pattern, and I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to make my basic triangle here, and do that, and do that. So we start with your basic triangle shape, and since your head isn't kind of flat on each side, you kind of need to fluff out your, and you just kind of eyeball it, and you kind of round it out a bit. And that's, there we go. And I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to just cut it on the one way. And these hats are usually pretty forgiving, so if you're not sure about how much to round it out, it's all good. Especially if you use a natural fiber like wool and such, because it'll form to your head the more you wear it. Actually, my hat's kind of stretched out after a while. So I'm going to cut my pattern. So actually, and that's a little less. Oop, there we go. I'm going to get my camera again. Sorry about that. It's hanging on the top of my laptop, so I do apologize. So there I have my little bit more rounded out pattern. And in my eyes, it's not looking round enough, because if I compare it to my old pattern, this one looks a little rounder. I'm kind of measuring it on there. I'm like, so I might, since I have more stuff on here. And what I do suggest you do, because this is kind of freehanding your pattern, is to, once you get a pattern made, cut it out in muslin or scrap fabric and just run it up on the sewing machine and make sure it fits the way you want it to and how you want it to. And I'm just gonna cheat and make myself a slightly more rounded pattern because it just doesn't feel like it's quite enough. So I'm gonna redo this one. I'm just gonna lay this down over the top. Try it again. Oops. So this is the part that's easier in person for me. So I do apologize. Let's see. Just gonna try that again. Round it and angle it down. It's not a whole lot. It was just visually, it just didn't quite look plump enough. It's like finding a skinny Santa. It just doesn't look right. If anybody has any questions as we go, please feel free to ask, because it's kind of weird it being so quiet. All right, that looks a little bit better to me. So, all right, so I have my pattern. And then pretty much at that point, you grab your fabric, whichever fabric you want. And I like to cheat, if at all possible. Wool is very nice because it usually doesn't fray as much on the edges. But I usually like to cheat if I can, because I'm what you call lazy, I will cut mine out on this. There we go. Because where are we going here? Let me find my selvage. There we go. I like to cut my pieces out. You can barely see that. The selvage of the fabric, I like to have it like this. I like having this edge on the selvage part, just because it's, for me, it's cleaner, it's smoother, and it's easier to take care of. On this hat, I did not make this hat. This was one that I got from somebody else, and you can see that they didn't do anything to the edges, where they did a pinking on it. And the wool's okay, but this kind of has frayed, and it has rolled. I never got around to finishing it. I was going to, but you know how that goes. But I didn't make this one. But I think it looks better, but that's just me. And so then you just cut your pattern pieces out. If you're doing one layer of fabric, of wool or fleece or whatever, then that's all you need. Let's see. So that's probably the hardest part, is making your pattern. And like I said, I would make it out of muslin or some scrap fabric, and make sure it fits. And then after you have your pattern and you know that's what you want to, that's the right size and such, then you just start putting it together. As I lose, my cat likes to eat thread, so I have to make sure there's no yarn hanging off, because that's not a cleanup that I like to do, getting yarn from my cat. You can do different stitches, which you can't see on this one. Where's my other hat get to? I do apologize. Oh, there's the thread-eating cat. He just walked in. You can do, whoop, let me get the camera thingy here. You can do a straight stitch, which is nice and easy. And what I normally do, because little OCD, is I will take my yarn and I'll kind of measure. If I'm just doing the straight stitch by itself, I'll just measure my kind of yarn about 3 times with a little bit extra. And I will start it at the top, and I'll do a running stitch all the way down to the bottom, flip over the edge, and do the running stitch back up and fill in so that it's a solid thing. And that way I have my ends at the top, and then I tie it together there, so that I'm going to have all my knots at the top. And then I'm not going to have any knots where it's going to be hitting me against my head, because I'm delicate and I don't like knots against my head. So that's my suggestion on that. I don't think you can do a decorative stitches if you like, if you know them. I've done them with a blanket stitch. If you don't know what a blanket stitch is, I can demonstrate that. Would anybody like to see what a blanket stitch looks like?
I'd like to see, because I always forget how to do them.
Everybody's so quiet. Everybody's so quiet. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, William. I will. The blanket stitch is actually, I have to remember how to do this now. Me and my bright ideas, huh? The blanket stitch, you start wherever you're going to start on the hat. And I'm just going to run this one here and start it on the inside. And I'm off camera. I need to move over a little bit, I guess. There we go. That's better. Ugh. But if it's anybody's local to the West and it's going to be at Arts and Sciences, I'm not doing hats, but I'm doing shoes. But I'm more than willing to talk to anybody on doing these. See, this is a thick roll too. That was a little hard to pull through. More than willing to talk to somebody in person and help them with patterning and such if they want. If anybody's out here. So the blanket stitch, you get your stitch started. And I think I did that wrong. I'm going to come up through the middle. I'm going to come up between the 2 pieces of wool in the middle there. I'll probably get it started wrong. And then you flip it over. I'm trying to do it this way. And then you go in, however, not quite 1/2 inch, 3/8 maybe, whatever looks good to you. It's all subjective. And you just, and I, on the, if I'm doing the blanket stitch, I always start down here because I'm going to cover it with fur. So if I mess up the first stitch or so, nobody's going to see it. Prior planning. So the blanket stitch is just very easy. You just have your loop of fabric, yarn, not fabric, loop of yarn, and you pull it through like that, and it leaves the line across the top. And one of the things with doing the stitch like this is it covers the top of your, if you have a contrasting color in here, it covers that up more. So if you're just lining it just to have it lined and you don't care if you're, as a decorative feature to have the colors show through, the blanket stitch is kind of cool. You can do it in, you know, contrasting colors to your fabric and such. But like I said, it covers up more of your lining fabric color. So those are just design features that you can think about if you're, and if you're really good at them, you know, if you can do fancy stitches, those are pretty cool too. See, the blanket stitch is very easy. And I know there's YouTube tutorials and such that'll, if you forget, but it's just going through the loop and then pulling it down. Does that make sense to everybody there? Yeah, there we go. And you can leave it like that. But I have also, when I did that, one of my hats was a little loose because the fabric pulls a little bit more than if you have the straight stitch. And I didn't quite like the look of it just like that. So I went through and did a running stitch. So I just had basically boxes and boxed it all around. So the stitching is up to what you'd like to see in your hat. Let's see. You can, like I said before, I think you can put designs on your hat once you get all your 4 panels done. You can design them up. You can put real fur, faux fur, woven trim, inkle loom trim. You can use store-bought trim, or you can leave them. You can also sew them if you're like making them out of linen. It's easier on the linen than it is on the wool because then you get the wool, you get really thick seams, but you can still do it. You can make it so that the seams are on the inside if you don't want them fluffing out on the outside. I wouldn't sew them like this. I would sew them individually, flatten the seams out, and then put your lining and your top color on top like that. And then put it together like that. And that's when you really need to make sure that you have your seam allowance at the bottom, because then you would close it up and then machine stitch or hand stitch, depending on what you want to do along the edge there. I've seen a lot of them made out of some of them made out of wool, some of them made out of linens with the pattern like this, which right now the name of the pattern is escaping me. It's been a very long week at work. And they're just basically a skull cap, no fur of any kind, and just decoration along the edge. That goes for a lot of different cultures because this is a very basic head shape. So these hats were made for many different cultures and many different time periods because they're basic and so very easy to do. So other than that, like I said, the hardest part is getting the pattern to make sure that it fits your head properly. And then deciding if you want to have fur on it or trim on it. And I'll just put that back up there. All right, I'm losing my camera again. Don't really need to just keep looking at my shirt there. I do apologize for that. That's not going to work. I'm having problems with my camera staying straight here.
I'm sorry.
There we go. I'll just hold it up. Well, that's the very basics of doing the hats. Tapestry needles like this. I think these are listed as cotton darners because they have the big eyes. are really good for using the wool threads and such. And you can also use like the pearl cottons if you want. And they're also good to have the same needles. And other supplies that are very handy is if you're having thick fabric and you're trying to pull the wool through, these are grippers, needle grippers. And I use these when the needle gets stuck, if that makes sense. And come on, camera. All right. So actually, that's the basics for doing the hats. And I just can't handle that camera there. Does anybody have any questions? Anything I can show better or talk about?
What's the best way to add the fur around the outside? Is it better to like put it around the bottom and then tack it to the upper, or what's the best way to go about that?
Well, there's different ways. Good question. Thank you. I'm still trying to get my camera right. Like on this hat right here, these are coyote tails. Mm-hmm. If you're doing real fur, she just tacked them on. You can kind of see the stitch. Let me get in there. Mm-hmm. The stitching in there. She just tacked them along the edge right there, and so that it hangs over. I cheated when I made my very first hat because this I found at a thrift store a parka with the fur hood, and I got it and I donated the jacket back and I kept the hood, and it was very nice because it was already sewn into a strip of fabric, so I could just tack that down. Hey Mitch, let me see. I thought I had a piece of fur here. I'm going to abandon you for just 1 second because I thought I'd grabbed the fur, but I'm not seeing it. So I'm going to go grab the one that I'm going to be putting on my hat. So I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I'm prepared. Sorry about that. I thought I'd already grabbed it. This is a, because I'm a bit of a scrounge, so I tend to pick up things. And this is a fur collar off of a jacket or a sweater. There we go. And what I do with these, because these are usually pretty cool, is I will take the lining out, and there's usually a padding in there, and I will take this all apart. And one of the nice things, if you find the collars like this, is that they usually have a twill tape to it, which is really nice because this is way too big to go, it's going to go around my head a time and a half, maybe 2. And it's also curved. It's not all one width, sorry. So I need some water. So what I will do with this one is I will take it apart, take the stuffing out. So I just have the fur itself with the twill tape on there. And then I will take it and measure the width that I want, which is probably going to be about 3 inches. And I will keep the straightest edge that I can with the twill tape on it and lay it out. Take a razor blade, a nice sharp razor blade of some sort, and cut the back of the fur very lightly, or the back of the hide, and cut it very lightly because you don't want to use scissors on fur or fake fur if you can help it, unless you have yards and yards to do. But in small pieces like this, you take the razor blade, you run it along the back side, and that way you pull it apart and you have less fluff everywhere, and you don't have like somebody cut the bangs on your fur on it. So you're pulling it apart and you're just cutting the hide for the most part. You're not trimming the fur off. And so that makes it easy. And I will usually tack down on the hat. I will tack down on the one edge the hide side. And that way, when I flip it up like this to tack it down, if that's a very bad visual. But when I fold it up the hat to tack it, I have the easy to sew twill tape on it. If you're using a fur that you don't have that on, sometimes it's easier to sew it, take your rough edges together and sew and put it together and sew it like this one was. The fur is like this, and it's on a piece of fabric. And sometimes that's easier because then you just have the one piece of fabric to sew down. But that's a little bit of hand, I would do that by hand myself. You can do it on machine as long as you're pulling your fur away and sewing that down. But you can also just tack the edge of the hide along the edge of the bottom edge of your hat and flip it, and then just kind of tack down the other raw edge. Usually they're fluffy enough, you're not going to see the stitching. It is harder when you don't have something attached to the hide. It just makes it, because the edges are a little rougher, if that makes sense. And if you're using a fake fur, those are much easier because you can tuck those edges in a little bit better than you can some of the hides, and you can cut them exactly straight. Does that help on that question?
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I really like, and it's harder to find in California, the parka hoods, because it fit exactly. It was the exact measurement that I needed for my hat. So I've kept looking for those since then, and they're not as easy to find. I'm starting to see if I can adjust this again. Does anybody have any other questions?
What other kind of variety can you do with these? I know with the stitching can be on the inside or the outside, but how can you continue, or what other kinds of things can you do to make your hat look more unique? I think you've got, was that Rose's hat with the fur, with the embroidery on it?
This one?
Yeah, stuff like that. What kinds of things can we do to decorate it, or maybe make it more comfy?
I've seen people, do the overstitch like this, and it's just like pearl cotton with the stitch over the top. And I've seen people put elements of their device on there. I've seen people put, well, this is this tiny little thing, but this was a site token that I put up there. But I've seen people put big baubles on there. I've seen people put different, numerous site tokens on there, fun ones. You can barely see. I did a wolf head. I didn't, this was my learning experience, and I'm going to have to put new fur on it because this, the moths have killed a lot of my furs. So I just did the wolf head because I thought that was really cool. And then I did a line stitch of, I'm trying to get the fur off of it there. I just did the line stitch on there because I thought it was cool, and I put a bead on there. But I've seen on this style of hat with the fur and such, a lot of people doing, like I said, maybe elements of their device, or just whatever they like. Whatever you can do yourself, or I've seen people put patches on them, like wool patches, because you can make different designs with out of wool, smaller pieces of wool, and stitch those down so you can move them to hat if you want.
Like an applique, is that what you
Kind
mean?
of like an applique. I was thinking specifically of one that I had done, like it wasn't on a hat, it was on a pouch, and I did a wolf head, and it was just the thinner pieces of wool, and I blanket stitched down different colors on it to do the wolf, the teeth and the eyes, and outline different parts of the wolf, and just did a tiny little blanket stitch. Unfortunately, I never took a picture of it, so I can't show what it looks like. I should ask Leotolf if he still has it, if I could finally take a picture of it 20 years later. But you know, I've seen people put beads on them. But it's all in what you feel like you want to wear with what the outfit you're wearing too. A lot of people wear the pretty much the plain ones, and then have a really cool woven decorative trim on it, inkle loom trim, and I have an inkle loom now, and that's my next thing is I want to learn how to do that so I can try that on some of the hats. I've not done that yet, but I see a lot of people doing that. So it is personal. I think it's really cool to have it personalized with things that are important to you and that you like and you love. Whether it's 100% period or not, we're making an effort. And if it makes you smile, makes other people go, "Oh, look at that cool hat." I think that's a good goal.
If you want to look like a Polish hussar, you could put some eagle feathers on it.
If you're tribal, if you can document eagle feathers.
They were worn by Polish hussars on the front of their hat. You can attach them with the brooch.
Yeah, but eagle feathers, you have to have documented Native American to be able to have the eagle feathers in the United States. That is my understanding.
Okay, well, I guess the ones I bought weren't really eagle feathers then, but you
A
can
lot of them
them.
are dyed turkey feathers.
Yeah.
When my son was going through Boy Scouts, and they had the Order of the Arrow, they had to have eagle feathers, and we had to get the dyed turkey feathers because his dad's part Native American, but it's only verbal documentation, not written documentation, so he couldn't legally get. That is my understanding, that you have to have the tribal background. But the dyed turkey feathers look good on there. I mean, they're not like the big German hats where you have the big cool feathers, but you know, but these can be fun. I like the fluffy ones like this, especially because I wear them anytime it rains mundanely, because when I pull it down and I have my glasses and I don't have the stick in my hair, it keeps the rain off my glasses. So that's my reason I have the big fluffy is on there, is because I like it and it's practical, and I hate water on my glasses. But you can find some really cool fabrics. I don't think I have any in my bin here. I like this. This is a striped wool. I found some really fun ones. Unfortunately, they're in bins of fabric. I'm making a hat out of this fabric someplace. And what I also like to do is find really cool vintage coats, women's coats, men's coats. Usually women had more patterns, and find some really cool. I didn't think to grab those as examples, so I do. Sorry about that. But I found those, you know, because you don't need that much. You know, it's just four panels this big, because you can line it or not in anything else. And sometimes you can, if you find these really cool vintage coats with, I have an orange one, and it's kind of like diamond patterns on it, which is a pattern that they would have used, or close to it. And but nobody else is going to have that either. I like making ones that are pretty much one of a kind, and unless I decide to make two hats out of the big coat, but you know, or a matching bag or something like that. And somebody posted something
Yeah,
in
you have
chat.
a couple questions in the chat. What
Oh, there you
lining
go.
do you find works best for the style of hat? Linen versus silk versus cotton? That's the first one.
Okay, let me get up here. Let me get to the things and the blanket stitch classes. Yeah, these styles were worn by, like I said, by lots of different people because people throughout the ages because it's so easy, um, and the 4 panel hats are documented. I like I said, I've never done a handout because I've never done like the history of the hats and such. It was always just make and take kind of thing. But if you do, if you look 4 panel hat online, they found them in bogs because that's a very popular place to find things. And they're, I think that the skull cap kind is very are the one like the ones that they find in the bogs a lot, and they're the ones without the seams that pop out. Though this style is more documented towards the Mongols and that side of the world. So they're documentable, but I think we still kind of do a little bit of leeway on some of the decorating we do. But I'm personally okay with that, unless somebody puts a big pink McDonald's figure on there. But then again, that'd be kind of fun and it'd make me laugh. So I guess that'd be okay with me too. I'm not going to tell anybody, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be wearing that hat because it's got a pink goofy on there or something. It's just like, you got to have a little bit of fun. And if you're not taking it serious, that's how I roll. But that's me. Yeah, a lot of Viking persona have that style. Yeah, but the Viking have, like I said, more of the flat with the twill, with the woven trim is more of the documentable Viking style, I believe, and such. So, but the fur ones are more of the, like I said, Mongols and such. And I didn't bring my computer glasses from work, so I have to squint. But if anybody ever has any other questions and such, I'm going to start looking into the documentation because now I'm kind of curious, and I will probably at some point start doing a handout on them to go with it, just because most people so far, like I said, we've just done make and take, and they weren't all that interested in having the documentation behind it. So I thought, no, I need to start doing that.
Bailey, did you touch on the linings? And I just was
Oh.
reading through everything and missed it.
Did I miss the linings? Oh, let me get back into the chat. Sorry about that.
That was the
Like I
first
said-
one before the all the other questions.
Okay. All right. Okay. For some reason, I'm not seeing anything about linings, but that's okay. The linings I've seen, the linen ones I've seen mostly lined with linen, or silk. Usually people tend to use the linens more than the silk because the silk kind of will slide a little bit, and it might be good for your hair. It's not catching in the fabrics and such on the ones without the fur on there. I personally usually end up, I often will just do mine wool, 2 layers of wool. Like these I have set that this is going to be lined with gray wool. But that's just me. That's just because I have a lot of wool. But I have lined them with cotton. You can line them with flannel if you want extra warmth or something. But you can line them with whatever you make them out of. You can, self-line them. Yeah, it really is all just personal preference. And like I said, they're just very easy to do. You can finish a hat within a class period almost. So if you're sewing the fur on, it might take a little bit longer if you have to, cut it and such. But you can definitely finish one in a day. So yeah, but any fabrics that they would have used, they would have lined them with. But yeah, that's part of the documentation that I might start looking into also to see if they have it listed for the lining. Because I've seen people wear them and made out of leather also, and I don't know that one's documentable, but they sure look good. So, anybody, any other questions? Did I miss anything else? I'm trying to read the chats over here.
Yeah, I kept an eye on the chat throughout the whole thing. So I
Thank you.
think everybody's questions that were put into the chat were answered. So
Okay, well, that's good.
we can end it whenever. Just tell me and I'll stop recording.
Okay, well, does anybody have any other questions? Or, yeah, I mean, you can always email me and ask me, and I can always give you a better reason to research things, more incentive. Like I said, I was just doing easy take and make so that you can have your head covered when it's cold out normally.
Why don't you put your email in the chat so people can see it?
Oh, I can do that. That's if I can type today. Here we go.
And I also put a link in for all the other classes that we're doing. They're usually every other week, but because of West Ontario and whatnot, I am like cramming June and July full because it's kind of wonky in there.
Yeah, I haven't signed up yet, but I might teach a class again at West Ontario.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm not sure what I would be teaching yet. So
there you go.
So I'm getting back into arts and sciences. So that's
awesome.
So going.
Hey, Bailey, if I could point out,
yes.
People absolutely love these types of hats for largesse. So I think that would be a hit at West Ontario War.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. I mean, because heaven only knows I have more than enough wool to help donate. You don't want to know how many bins of fabric I have. A lot.
All right, you want me to end it?
Unless anybody has any other questions
right.
or comments, I appreciate people showing up, and I do thank you for putting up with me rambling through my class. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And I'll stop right now.